Good morning, it's Karen A, and I'm here in Jerusalem. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. This is the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast. We're a family of recovered fellows who are recovering from all sorts of addictions and afflictions. So whether your issue is drugs or alcohol, binging, purging, debting, overspending, shoplifting, emotions, codependency, we hope that you will find someone in these recordings, these virtual rooms that you will relate to and get experience, strength, and hope from. You could check out our website at Reco12.com, and you'll hear a plethora of people from all around the world, all kinds of different fellowships sharing their experience, strength, and hope. If you would like to contribute a seventh tradition that helps cover the cost of the Zoom, you can do that at Reco12.com/support. It is my privilege today to bring to you Bob L. from Missouri. And I want to say a special thank you to Ray. We had a little scheduling snafu and technical difficulty, and our fellows are calm and at peace and really proved their recovery by, Ray stepped aside and we'll do another time. And Bob's up late. So we're grateful for all of you going to any lengths to work your program, whether that's, having the humility to step aside or the energy and dedication to stay up late. Much love to you both and much inspiration from your recovery. A little bit about the format of this meeting. We'll ask our brother Bob L. to share for about 30 minutes. And you could write your Q&A in the chat. You can write your questions down, and Bob will take them afterwards, at which point he will pray us out. We could go for an hour. Bob, if the questions fizzle out at 45 minutes, no stress. You don't have to, tread water or anything. Usually we get through the full hour and get a lot of experience, strength, and hope from our speakers. But, you could feel that out. We trust you, and we trust in your recovery and, of course, your higher power. Bob, thank you for joining us today. And fellows, wherever you are, if you are live or if you're hearing this recorded, which hundreds of people do around the world, thank you for joining us. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just refresh my memory. This is about my recovery in general, because I'm an alcoholic and a compulsive overeater. Is that?
Oh, well, we like to hear it all. Whatever's in your heart, whatever you want to share. Most of us here originally come from the spiritual gangsters, the spiritual cartel, where we work the big book for all addictions and all afflictions. We use our recovery to tackle all that is ailing us. So I'm fine with all of it. And certainly there are people here who will benefit from both or either.
All right. No, that's good. And if you'd like, I do have a couple of pictures just to prove that I qualify in my first fellowship. If you want to co-host me, I can throw those up.
I think you could share. Do I have to co-host you? How do I do that?
Yeah, you would.
Where do I go? Participants?
Yeah, go and
participants,
click.
Bob.
There's a whole choice of things.
What do I have to do to co-host you?
Where you see that more button, and there's a drop-down menu. You should.
Yeah, I do.
You see the choice.
Claim host role. No, login as host.
Make co-host. Are you? You know what? No, it won't work if you're not a host. Okay. We're good.
Oh, I don't think I am. Oh, darn.
No, that's okay. I'll go into this. I will tell you, you'll have to believe me that.
Maybe you could hold up a picture to
We're good. We're good. I'm Bob. I'll give you my addictions in the order in which I admitted them. I'm a compulsive overeater, and I'm an alcoholic. That encompasses a plethora of other behaviors which have been probably could qualify me to join about 6 or 7 other fellowships. I only claim these two because these are the two places I was led when I reached my absolute rock bottom in life. and this is where I found my relief from addiction in total. I'm not uncomfortable sitting at a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous. I can go to any food recovery program. My abuse of food has run the whole gamut and encompassed probably the bulk of my life. Let's put it this way: as far back as I can remember, I don't. I can tell you, I've got no external factors. I cannot. I'm not going to BS people, tell them about my war stories of my upbringing, middle class family, parents that stayed married until death do us part. Not wanting physically for anything in life, encouragement. No, so there's maybe that eventually helped me get to the core of what it means to have an unmanageable life, because I don't have a way to go back and blame the whole planet, my circumstances. Why did I do this? This was all generated from within, and culture, society. I'm not going to waste your time with that. I can tell you with the food addiction, and I know both addictions basically have the same physiological problem, which is not important. I am a adherent, shall we say. The big book is what I've used in my recovery. That's what my sponsors in both fellowships used, and it talks about the phenomena of craving, which essentially is the way it's been explained to me real short is that my body metabolizes certain substances, sugar being one of them, flour, differently than the average duck out there. I have family members, friends that will leave food on the table at a restaurant, will ask for a doggy box. They will. They don't have to sit and create stories. Why? They don't have to put on performances of how to show you how sensible they are with food. I did, because I became gradually the food started to take its toll. It's one thing when I tie on a good drunk, which I learned how to do a little later in life. I can sleep it off, maybe hide from sight for a couple of days. My eyes will clear up, and no one's gonna, in my mind, no one's gonna accuse me of being an alcoholic at that point. Now, mind you, I do that repeatedly. I know what's the problem, but you won't. But my problem with the food is cumulative. I can't sleep it off and come out Wednesday and be back to my svelte figure again. So for me to try to tell people I don't have a problem with food, I reek of the lie, and that was my history, and I got started to get in my 20s, and the food started to show. Now, I have to also tell you that in spite of this phenomenal upbringing I had, supportive upbringing, I had this view of myself as being the only person that had all these self-conscious emotions, and you all don't know this, you all got your stuff together. Yes, I can just look at you, no matter what your expression is, you all look like you got it going. And then there's poor, pathetic me. And that was, I wasn't part of the cool crowd. I can chuckle today. The reason I didn't become a pot smoker is because I never was a cigarette smoker. Now, how do you grow up in the 60s and not be a cigarette smoker or pot smoker? Well, no one ever offered me a cigarette because I didn't hang out with the crowd. I mean, and where I grew up, we had 3 traffic islands surrounding our high school, and that was where smoking in the boys' room took place. And so when the first time I got offered some pot in my late 20s, I took a drag and choked and gagged, and I couldn't handle the smoke. Now I will tell you, my friends were not about to give up on me. I did buy some really artistic bongs, and I had them until about 20 years ago, and well into my sobriety. Just as it was like I was going to put a Bob Memorial Museum together, even though I think I had made 2 attempts at them. But my friends, good friends as they were, we were all going to get buzzed this weekend on something, and my buddy's girlfriend brought out her cosmetic mirror and started spreading what looked to be baking soda on the mirror and had a razor blade. She started chopping it up, and I honestly, I had not a clue what was going on. And then they showed me how the operation worked. And that combined with the alcohol, snorted a couple lines of cocaine, and I know if I thought I had arrived when I had that first drink, I was there. I mean, my drinking from the start was blackout. I went blackout by closing time in Cleveland because closing time was 2:30. But when I went to New York State and closing time was 4, and that generally I'd be out of it with just a pure alcohol night. But boy, when I started with the Coke, it was games on, and I'd go a whole weekend with that stuff. And why did not that bring me to recovery? As I think I mentioned, I'm a little scaredy cat. I don't fit in. I did all this stuff in my buddy. There's about 4 or 5 of us hanging out in my buddy's parents' house. We're upstairs in his bedroom. I don't know what his parents thought we were doing up there from like Friday night to Monday morning. They didn't seem to care, but the police don't come busting doors down in suburban Maryland cul-de-sacs, even though my buddy kept looking out the window, paranoid as hell, I think, because he was going down into the district and scoring this stuff. But good buddy as he was, we had, this went on for about 6 months, and
got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Naturally, I wasn't working. I had job opportunities galore with the same company, and I wasn't taking advantage of them. I stayed on furlough, and the day came when a little problem arose, and that was that I had no more money. My mother, wise woman she was, after about the second bullshit call, pardon my language, about needing money because my employer had misled me. And, here they enticed me to come down to Maryland. I'm from Ohio, and there was no work. And she said no. Citibank and cut me off. They weren't about to extend my credit limits. And the day that I had no more cash, I got no more calls from my good buddies. My suburban dope man was not carrying credit. And so there I was, poor lonely. I have to tell you, too, if you're looking for a diet plan that works, but it's a little expensive, $200 a week in cocaine plan you will lose weight. I'd go for a whole week and not touch a bite of food, And I was hot. I was down to where I thought I should be. Now, mind you, when you stop taking the medication, it came back with a vengeance. And I finally went back to work. And what kept me out there with the booze was simply I had a very tolerant employer. I don't say the rules didn't say we could do this stuff, but the bosses were in. By grace of God, I never got stopped. I drove drunk. I've later met people that partied the way I did, drank the way I did, grew up in the same circumstances I did. I mean, we were talking, about soulmates. And the only difference between them and me this particular friend of mine that we first met is we met in a maximum security penitentiary where he was serving, I think there were 3 life sentences because he killed 3 people in a car wreck. And I was there as a volunteer, and the prison throws me out of there after the 2 hours. And so I've gotten I got off this nonsense of trying to debate whether I really earned my stripes in AA. There's no denying that I qualified. When I got to OA, I was in the neighborhood of about 100 pounds overweight. I was just I didn't carry my weight well. Let me BS you. Because I was not physically active. I drank a lot of beer and I looked like a fat pig. This is cut to the chase. My drinking, and see there, it wasn't every day, but my drinking was for one purpose. And the big book tells us what that is. Men and women drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And that is exactly when I had my first drink, co-workers invited me out, and they put up with a lot of stuff. They invited me out because, I think I had kind of a lonely, isolating mantra. And for the first time in my life at the age of 20, I'm working in an office. And they're mostly guys my age. And they, I think they decided they had a conference and decided to get me out of my shell. So one night they invited me out to drink out for a drink. No one ever says, let's go out and get wasted. Let's go out and have a drink. And I'm not one to admit that I'm up to things because I've been spending my whole life up to that point trying to prove you I got this. And I told them I've never had a drink. And their eyes lit up. I swear, it was the same expression I've seen when I asked someone to sponsor me. And their eyes lit up. They said, we'll show you. And boy, was I a quick study. And I went out every night of the week. They would go out, I would go out. I was not one to go prowling to bars myself, at least not at that point in my life. And I started having the consequences. Wake up in a hotel room, not have a clue how I got there, and I got no good stories to tell me I had a good night or anything. And calling the office trying to figure out where my car is. Do I need to go out the window, or is the room paid for? I started drinking in Cleveland one day and woke up 100 miles to the west in Toledo. Now, mind you, I was supposed to be in Toledo, but I was not. So I worked in the railroad. I was supposed to be on the front end of the train. I was on a caboose on the rear end of the train, and they put up with a ton of it. My fellow crew members just dragged me through my drunk tail on a caboose of the freight train, and that's how that stuff happened. Everyone. And I don't recall people telling me to cut back, because I can always point to other people on the railroad that were worse than I was. That was how I rationalized my drinking. Won't call me an alcoholic. Now he slurs his speech after we had one guy's nickname was Two Beer Gear. Now Teddy Slush Bucket. They're alcoholics. So I just use that to reinforce my denial. So fast forward. What am I doing in the rooms of recovery? No consequences. Doctors had told me early on that I needed to lose weight. They reminded me of my family history of early onset of heart disease. And my answer to them was simply stop going to see them. Did I have emotional problems? My mother sent me to see therapists. I got bored with that, so I stopped seeing therapists. The end of the line came for me when I was 44 years old, and my pattern of socializing, either let's stop for a drink, let's stop to get a bite. What happens is all these other children I'm playing with in their 20s, they start to do responsible things like get married, start to raise families. Remember early on, one guy, after at 1:30 in the morning, an hour before closing time, he'd leave half a beer on the table and say, "Well, the wife's got plans. I gotta leave." And I became increasingly isolated. I had a job now. I had a responsible job. I was actually trusted, and I had a lot to be grateful for, but I'm still obsessed with this whole thing. What are you thinking of me? I've got to prove myself continually. This particular day, I guess all the circumstances came together. I had no one to impress, no one to socialize with. I was just home alone. I had tried, at this point in time, it was the food that was my obsession. And I had tried diet after diet. I bought lots of books, and these were sensible diets. There can be no fad diets for Bob. And I think once I stayed on one for about 3 months, another maybe 4 weeks, I'd lose weight pretty quick. My metabolism was still pretty active. This particular, I think it'd come down to like 4 days. This particular day, I couldn't even start. And the thoughts that resurfaced was, is life worth living? That was the sign of my failure. I know at that moment, the thought was my cry for help. Because I didn't have the physical means readily available or the knowledge how to kill myself. And I think there was one little piece of saving grace, is I wasn't a total disbeliever in some sort of higher entity. I had a cynicism mile long about organized religion in that, but my belief was no more than this. You look up at the sky and ask yourself where it ends. And I knew that there was some force out there because it had no definition. At that very moment, I reached over and picked up the telephone and called a coworker. And told them exactly how I felt. I told them the whole package. Now, again, in the world of winning friends and impressing enemies, and making that's probably not high on the list of things I would have chosen to do. So I knew I was on autopilot at that moment. I looking back. Well, why did I call him? He was one of my drinking buddies from back out west in Ohio. And we got along well. He was an angry drunk. I was a sloppy drunk, but I knew how to get angry at the same things that the angry drunks got angry. So we got along well, and our lives went different directions. We reconnected down in New York, upstate New York, and the dude, other than looking somewhat well preserved for 15 years having passed, was totally different. It was kind of like Bill describes his meeting with Ebby after Ebby got sober with the Oxford group. So, he was, what do you say, fresh-skinned, bright-eyed, the old boy was on fire. Well, my buddy Brad, when we met, the first words out of his mouth, he told me, "Bob, I admitted my alcoholism. I joined Alcoholics Anonymous." I said, "Oh, dude, you weren't that bad." That day he spent better part of 4 hours. I played my usual stunt. When I just got in those moods, I called up the railroad, told them I couldn't come to work. I had the union job, so they didn't really have a way to question me. And they'd already called Brad and told him, "You better get some rest because Bob's job is open tonight." And he spent the rest of that afternoon on the phone, and he told me he'd heard the ladies at his meetings. He was a member of AA. He did not qualify as a member of OA, but he'd heard the ladies talk about Overeaters Anonymous. He said, "Why don't you try it?" He finally convinced me, and I did it for nothing more than I knew he was going to ask me again. And I went to St. Peter's Hospital in Albany, New York at 5 in the afternoon. I walked into a room, and there was 4 skinny ladies sitting there. Now, we all know that just being thin doesn't mean I've recovered from anything. And I later learned that this disease of compulsive overeating has many aspects to it, including bulimia and anorexia, which I believe Toodle's lady suffered from. But see, that's not what I saw. I saw what I wanted. I saw people at a healthy weight. One of the ladies got right into solution, talked about what she did to recover. In OA, we have just to do the first step, we have these tools of recovery, and she explained how she had a sponsor, had a food plan, weighed and measured the portions for her meals, went to so many meetings a week, made these phone calls, all these kind of disciplines which require a bit of discipline. I did what I felt when I felt like it, and without regard to anyone else, but I wasn't ready to hear a solution. And then she said, "Well, try 3 meetings a week." And I had a million excuses why I couldn't do that. And finally she said, "Well, you can go to an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous." And I ran out of excuses. It's every time I've made progress in this program, it's usually because I've run out of excuses. I'm not very, I don't think on my feet very, very well. And I went to AA, slunk in the room, did what, found the newcomers assigned seat in the back. This was one of those meetings that they don't let you escape. And so I finally had to shake some hands, got to know some people. I said I'm an alcoholic because everyone else was saying this. God forbid I be different. It was an open meeting. I could have said I'm from another fellowship, but they welcomed me. They universally welcomed me. And I'll fast forward again. Other than going to meetings for the next 2.5 years, I didn't do much of anything. I learned how to chant the chants. I could read how it works with the proper voice inflection. How are you doing? "Oh, fine, fine." And I could smile. defined as an acronym. Keep it clean, but it's about being insecure, neurotic, and egotistical. And I'll let you interpret what the F stands for. But I mean, how often, even today, do we walk into a meeting and you say, "How you doing? How you doing?" And man, life's really stinks today. No, it's almost reflective. But I've had to reach another bottom. I'm one of these people that gets dribbled off the floor like a basketball. And 2.5 years later, I'd lost some weight. I started one of those diets I couldn't start before. And I, of course, did what I always did. I jumped off of it. I won't say fell off it or slipped. Slipping, it's like, there was a banana peel I didn't see and I stepped on it. No, every diet that I broke, I jumped off of it. And a coworker who was not exactly a fan of mine one day remarked, "Well, I see you fell off your diet, Bob," in this very wry, sarcastic voice. And I decided I needed to start doing what people were talking about. I need to get a sponsor. I need to get an organized food plan. And I started looking around the rooms, and we had a we care list in New York where you could put down, check whether you needed a sponsor or were available to sponsor. And after I'd look around and see that no one was looking, I would check I needed a sponsor. Jump forward about 2 weeks from that date, the very first man I ever saw at an OA meeting showed up at this meeting in Albany. Had been, I swear, for 2.5 years, and certainly not because we don't suffer from this addiction. But he moved there from Boston, and he was on a take no prisoners march. His sponsor said, "Mister, when you get to Albany, and if you don't get people to sponsor quickly, you're going to overeat again." And after we made about 30 seconds of chit chat, "Where are you from? What brings you here? Bob, do you need a sponsor?" That was August 29th of 1998. Remind you my sobriety date. I've been dry for a couple of years, but I count that as the date that I cried out for help on February 23rd of 96. August 29th of 98, I said yes. And I sat down with this little man, somewhat dry and sarcastic. I'm not quite sure if he was fully happy with his abstinence, which he broke later on, but he told me in no uncertain terms this is what he did, and if I wanted what he had and I was willing to do what he did, he could help me. And he presented me with a food plan. I weigh and measure my portions to this day. Over 26 years, I don't consume anything with flour and sugar, caffeine, no intoxicants of any sort whatsoever. Of course, that's in line with my sobriety. And I sponsor. I'll jump back to the alcohol. That is where, in AA, is where I actually did the step work. Beyond step one, it's the same journey. The same emotions drove my drinking, drove my eating. And I got to the point where how long can you sit around these rooms and hear people and want what these people had and not finally ask for help? And I found myself at a group that talked about nothing but going through this big book, page for page, with a sponsor. And I asked, after almost 7 years in recovery, I asked someone to do that with me. And that journey started. What do I do today? I'm going to, I could talk for another hour about what my first real AA sponsor did take me to my steps. What's most singularly important today is service. Getting up at 2 a.m. To attend a meeting is lightweight. I can't break my arm, pat myself in the back for that. It's because I got up at 2 a.m, headed for the refrigerator. or still in a bar at that hour. The service that has counted the most has been stuff that I don't want to do. It's been totally out of my comfort zone. Today, that's included doing, besides the usual sponsoring, getting on 12-step lines, call list and taking calls in the middle of the night from people that need help. Probably the single biggest piece of it for me today is our prisons. I'm privileged to be able to facilitate meetings in 7 different state and federal prisons around St. Louis. I'm retired. I have the time to do that. It's not before someone thinks that this is all I'm ever going to do for the rest of your life. No, it's I've traveled. I've gone overseas. My brother lives in London, is very accommodating. I obsessed the first time I went over there about getting the food. Finally, my baby brother said, Bob, this is London. We have supermarkets here. And I've taken a lot of vacations. I worked in a business that required me to go to some obscene places like Las Vegas. If you live in Las Vegas, no offense, it was obscene the way I used to conduct myself in Las Vegas. And I've been able to say to my coworkers as they're headed out to raise some hell, I say, I've got something I got to get done, and end up at a meeting. I've done what they told me to do. And today, I'm not complaining. I'm 73 years old. I don't know what. I did not retire with a 401k. Most of that had gone up my nose, and I spent the next 15 years paying that off. And I still was a spendthrift, and in that. So, but you know what? I have exactly what I need today. I have a nice little apartment. I don't let stuff from the past define me. I gave away all kinds of collectibles over the last 7-8 years. I'm looking forward to what comes down the road next. And that's about all I got. And I would thank for asking me. I hope I didn't run over too much. And I'll pass.
Hey Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
Wow, what a story. I didn't put you with the over 60 either. A testament to Bob's recovery. What's that?
They say flattery will get you everywhere.
All right. Well, it's the truth, and the big book says we have been reborn. So yeah, you got at least 23 years back, at least, if not more. I'm sure you got your whole life back. What you see in front of you, people who see him on the screen, and for those of you who are listening in, this man just said he's 73. He looks a lot younger than that. He's fresh face, kind of like our friend Ebby in the big book. He's paid back his debts.
Yeah.
He's living life one day at a time. He's honest about that 401k going up his nose. I don't think I'll ever forget that line. About overeating, about, all these different rock bottoms with different substances, pursuing that elusive feeling of joy and comfort. And today you have a man that will wake up in the middle of the night to talk to a bunch of people, in Europe and Israel, Asia, etc., to tell his story, to keep himself recovered and to help you. And I thank you for that, Abel. That's super, super, super inspiring and super helpful. This is a guy who told you about our important message in our fellowship, which is sponsor, get through the steps and work with others. The big book tells us when all else fails, work with another addict will save the day. 2/3 of the people who worked with others recovered. We know that from our big book. And if you only work our workbook, you got that in your Cliff Notes. So does anyone have any questions for Bob, whether it's about cocaine, substances, compulsive overeating? I, for one, am curious to hear about your compulsive overeating, that fellowship, what kind of food plan you got, how you were able to tackle that.
I'll just give you it's not so much the diet, it's that it has, there's a subset of Overeaters Anonymous called 90 Day. And what 90 Day is that we weigh and measure our portions, and we avoid flour and sugar primarily. And that gives definition. The food, there's a million ways I can lie to you about my food consumption, but when I have 2 digital scales, I have extra batteries to make sure there's no oopses. That is how I know that I've consumed the right amount of food, and my twice monthly weigh-ins are boring as all get out because my weight doesn't move barely about a half a pound, or stone, or whatever you would call it. And so it's, other than that, everything I do in OA, I work that with the same fervor. I believe if I were to slip and either break my abstinence in OA, I believe my sobriety, my attitude would deteriorate, or might have already deteriorated, that my sobriety would probably go down the tubes. The only difference today is I know how. I've heard enough addicts share. I wouldn't be waiting in my buddy's suburban cul-de-sac for him to come back with the dope. I know how to find my way around the district, but I probably wouldn't last very long. Long answer, short question.
No, that's what I wanted to hear. And how did you hit your rock bottom with the food? Well, where did you hit your rock bottom with the food, with different fellowships? You had the Coke, you had the drinking, you had the food. Can you talk about your different rock bottoms that you felt you need the solution? I think you're on mute.
I won't say that I hit a rock bottom with the Coke. It simply was that I didn't have a supply anymore. And I thought that I'd lost my good friends that rejected me. And I did uppers for quite some time until the Spoil Sport company I worked for started with this random testing stuff. And so I started initially working less so I won't get detected. That wasn't what brought me to a bottom. It was the food that enabled me to make that original cry for help, because I couldn't even start a diet that day. And then when I got real with my drinking, I realized that if I went back, the first step gives us an either or. If when you want to, you find you cannot stop entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. I know I have little control when I start drinking. And I also know that I wanted to drink continually. And, just being white knuckling does not make me a non-alcoholic. So, I've got both. And so OA led me into AA and helped me get honest with my drinking at that point. So I've attended AA meetings here recently because a lot of the guys, I came from the last 3 nights I've been at 2 different maximum security prisons. The guys, when you're sitting in the room, they sound like anyone does at a normal AA meeting on the outside. They're talking about life's problems. Mom have, the family at home. Some have families that love them. If I close my eyes and I didn't notice that they were all dressed the same and that there was the room was somewhat secure, I think I was just at a regular meeting out in the suburbs. So I realized there's no need for me to compare my bottoms. But they can out war story me any day, but that doesn't what makes any of us addicts, the degree of war story.
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word-of-mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
Okay, great. Can you share with us about how you work with others, how you take people through the big book, how many sponsees you have at a time? Especially when you're in different fellowships, make sure to get off mute. When you're in different fellowships, you work, the same program with all of them, or is it a slight twist?
Right now, I think I'm sponsoring between the 2 fellowships. They say if you know how many people you're sponsoring, you're not sponsoring enough. But I'm going to guess between 7, 6, 7 people. The difference in to get past that first part of the first step, this admission of powerlessness, and now what do we do to put the substance down, takes a little more work in OA. So I share the food plan I've got with them. I don't offer it to them as a diet. It's a framework. They get a lot of choices to what, proteins, what carbs they eat, fruit, veggies, and that. If they have particular medical dietary issues, we formulate that into the structure. Because we're not doctors or nutritionists or anything. After that, what I do is, like was done for me, we go through the big book, paragraph by paragraph, word by word. My sponsor, the one that I first went through the steps with, was about half my age. This is the way it's always ended up. Maybe it's God's intent that I'm not going to outlive sponsors, if the actuarials are right. But he sat down, he explained, he shared what it meant to him. He shared when we got to action parts, what I needed to do. And that's the only way I know how to do this. Anything, if I tell you, suggest you do anything else that's beyond my own experience, I'm outside of my zone. That's what we share is our experience. People have been telling me in the second person what you need to do for a long time. And it's almost pervasive in life. I think it's a species because I want to impress you. So I'm going to tell you my expertise, whether I've got a damn bit of experience or not. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. And in recovery, people have told me what they've done. And that's what I can do today, is tell you what I've done. And it worked for me. I don't know if I covered all the bases there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And how do you work? Do you sponsor people in different fellowships? Do you sponsor in OA and CA? Do you
Just OA and Alcoholics Anonymous. Most of
and
my
you sponsor
sponsors,
the same exact? Yeah, go ahead. You do the same program with both? You take them through the big book the same way in both, or?
yeah, yeah. Once we get into the step work, there's no difference. The whole idea is
Cool.
to be able to deal with that point before I take that first drink, before I take that first compulsive bite, which would be food outside of my boundaries. That's the whole purpose. And as you know, after we get done with the doctor's opinion, I'm on with a new copy of the big book, because I've worn out a couple. Every place in that big book where it refers to carrying this message, I've circled and put a 12 by it in the margin. And it's I know it's going to run in the hundreds, if not thousands, before I get through this book. And that's, sometimes I'm not the kind of a hard ass I probably should be, because it was the dry sarcastic hard asses that penetrated me. But I hear people talk about, well, I'm doing a step a month, or I'm not, it took me a while to get these rooms. There's no sense in rushing it. Well, BS. I watched my sponsor. We were at a meeting in a mission, and a guy was in pretty bad shape. And I just started working with the sponsor, and he asked the guy a question. He says, "Has the booze got you beat?" And the guy kind of grunted, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you think there's some power outside of you that will fix this?" And it kind of same guttural sort of a grunt. "Will you let that power try?" I think he just nodded his head. And next thing, we had found a pad of paper and drew lines down the sheet into 3 columns, and he started them on a 4th step. Recovery starts at step 4. Steps 1, 2, and 3, how long we do that dance is, measure the depth of my denial. I did that dance a long time because I was not as physically pounded. Maybe for a number of reasons. Maybe I had an outsized ego, but yes, my sponsor took me through the book. It takes you about 70 pages of reading till you get up to the place where it starts talking about the 4th step. And he had to go through that word for word. This guy that was sitting with us that day, he didn't need 6 months of preparation. He was ready to go. Now, I never saw him again. I don't know if my sponsor ever heard from him again. Because I hate to say this, the odds are not good of us sticking around. That's why I know I've had a miracle. But so there's no set rule that you need to take, so long, or, don't rush this. I think he also said that anything more than 3 weeks to do a 4th step is procrastination, which is a major defect of mine. And I got told that.
I love that message. That's a big misconception in a lot of unrecovered meetings, that addict have selfishness. I need to take time. I need to dive in. I need to explore myself. And we say that this is a disease of thinking. That kind of thinking is what got us here. But it can't be that if it takes so short, thorough, and yeah, that's an important thing that we have to get through here on this call, is that we want to get a sense of our grosser handicaps, like the big book says, and we want to get through this. If not, to drink is to die. We're going to go insane or die. What do you have to say about that, Bob?
Well, I've watched put it this way, at 73 years old, I've watched people around me. I have a cousin, talk to him frequently, has the food addiction. Last time I saw my cousin was last summer, and he had just had his second leg amputated. He was laying in an assisted living. He passed on about 4 months ago. Of all the complications. I'm starting to see people I work with that are retired. A friend of mine wasn't, no one would have called him an alcoholic, but he smoked to excess, he chewed tobacco to excess, probably drank enough to impair his body, though, he wasn't to the point where others would call him an alcoholic, you can drink a lot and do a lot of damage without getting the societal label. Basically, he didn't take care of himself. His food, the whole 9 yards. He collected 3 years out of a damn good pension system. And I'm starting to see that going on around me now. On the other hand, my father, I was told, our family has early history of heart disease, and he had his first bypass surgery at age of 57. He wasn't particularly heavy. He was overweight. And at that time, in a couple of years, he remarried after my mother passed on, and my stepmom just changed the way they ate, cleaned up the food. And guess what? He made it to 94. And he was not a compulsive overeater. He certainly wasn't restricted. He could have gone out and snuck around with the food, but he didn't do that. He followed my stepmom's guidance on dietary issues, and didn't have that problem anymore. The joke in our family is, since there's not a history of alcoholism, a bit of history of on my mother's side, I think there's a bit of history of food problems. But the joke is that they may have picked up the wrong baby when they checked out of the hospital when I was born. It's sometimes it's genetic, doesn't have to be.
Yeah, and our big book sure tells us that our diseases, some of us are from the ghetto, some of us are, like you said, you're a middle class family. I grew up in an upper middle class family, wanting for nothing. Some of our dysfunction is, social services. Some of us have white collar, and there's a solution here for everyone. Hold on a sec. So this program really has something for every man who is still suffering from whatever substance or compulsive behavior or thinking. Bob, thanks for joining us here today. It's not your day. It's in the middle of the night for you, so I'm going to thank you times two. And thank you for your service. Thank you for being an inspiration. With that, I'm going to ask you to pray us all out.
Hey, well, let's keep it simple, and the one that's probably most apropos, the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and here's the big part, the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you very much, Karen. Brandy, thank you for asking me.
Thank you for joining us, intelligent agent spearheads of God's everlasting creation. Go out there and help the man who is still suffering. Be well. Bye-bye. Have a good day, night, afternoon, evening.